So our presentation tonight is put on by the Columbus Area Historical Society, of which I'm a member. This is part of our Tap into History series. Every spring and fall, so in the spring, March, April, May, and then in the fall, September, October, November, we put on a presentation like this on different topics. So I've had the pleasure of putting this one together with the help of John and Loretta and a few others. And so anyway, John's going to take us on the tour. So there's one of their posters or signs. In fact, you can see these on eBay. There's a lot of them out there that people have collected, and they come at a pretty hefty price. The Kurth Brewery started in 1859 and continued brewing till 1949. And to put it in perspective, they started 2 years before Abraham Lincoln was president and the Civil War started, and 5 years before James T. Lewis of Columbus was governor of Wisconsin. So let's meet the Kurth family, and I'll let John do that.
Well, the brewery was established by my great-great-grandfather, Henry John Kurth, and then it was passed down to the next generation to my great-grandfather, and then to my grandfather and his brothers and sisters. Children of John Henry and Dorothea were Anna, Dorothea, or Dolly, who married Ralph Pratt, Henry, Christian, John William, or he was known to most folks as Hunts, married Ellen Ford, and Ellen Ford, incidentally, was the daughter of Captain Ira Ford, who was a well-known Civil War participant. And then Francis married Lloyd Sherrill, and they apparently paid attention to let's be fruitful and multiply. And then Aunt Ruth, great Aunt Ruth, was one of that same generation.
So we've got some of the Sherrills and here tonight, and we'll show in a bit. We'll show some of the houses that the Kurths owned, including the one where Ruth and Tom Hermanson lived. Just going back then, so as far as Henry John, he immigrated to America, or from Germany to America in the 1840s, and married Rika Homeyer in 1850. And then, as we said, they started the brewery in 1859. And then the second generation, and this picture is on the wall at the brewery. So John Henry, as John mentioned, and then he became, the business became known as the John H. Kurth and Company in 1886. And John Henry took over the brewery operations in 1880. John's grandpa, Hans, which I knew when I was a little boy, and my dad would take me into the brewery every once in a while. So, John, if you want to elaborate more on your grandpa.
Well, I remember my grandpa real well. We lived at 820 Park Avenue upstairs, my mom, dad, and I did, and my grandpa and grandma lived downstairs. So I probably spent as much time downstairs with my grandpa and grandma as I did upstairs with my folks. My grandpa would usually come home about mid-morning, and he'd have a sandwich and a beer. And I had a little mug, if you remember the small A&W mugs, I had a little mug like that, and he'd usually fill that up, and I'd have beer with him.
Then he said he'd read the Bible.
Oh, yeah. He'd take a break at noon and come home, and he had a chair in the living room that he always sat in, and on a stand next to it he had the Bible, so he'd always read a few passages out of the Bible and then take a nap, and then head back over to the brewery again. My dad was known to a lot of folks as Big John Kurth, and he was a big man. I know at one time he weighed 300 pounds. He stood about 6'4" to 6'5". He married Margaret Hermanson, my mother came, was the 9th child in the Hermanson family. And then my dad, for a time after the brewery quit brewing, operated a small beer distributorship. And then, as a lot of you probably know, he and Henry Roy started the Columbus Transport Company. And eventually my dad bought out Henry and operated on his own.
So if anybody rode on a school bus that's here, it was probably owned by the Kurth family. And I remember Big John was my bus driver. He had bus 15, the old stub nose, and cab over, I guess would be the proper term now. And also he was really into trap shooting and won some big awards.
One year at the Grand American, my dad won high overall, and that was based on 16-yard targets, handicap, and doubles. 1,200 targets, I believe, and he was high over thousands of shooters that were in attendance there at the Grand American, so really quite an accomplishment.
So you're a big hunter and fisherman, so the apple didn't drop too far from the tree, because your dad was the same. And in the bathroom at the brewery, there's a big framed picture, and I shouldn't say picture, but anyway, 50 years of Doug stamps, and that John's dad had. So every once in a while I'll say, well, I'm going to go check and see if there's still 50 Doug stamps. Once in a while I'll come back and see there's 49 or there's 51. All right, you know this guy?
I was born in 1943,
Right.
and lived right next to the bottle house. And when I was only about 4 years old, I would go over to the bottle house and watch the bottle line go around, and it would come to a point where the bottles slid down and went in front of a guy that sat on a seat and operated a labeling machine. It had kind of a treadle on it like a sewing machine, an old sewing machine. And then, I surprised that my folks would let me go over there by myself at the time, but when I first walked into the building, there was a pop bottling line. And then I guess the upstairs had a room where they built and maintained wooden beer cases. Out behind that bottle house, there was a huge shed that was full of beer cases with beer bottles in them. And unfortunately, a lot of that stuff just got hauled to a landfill after the brewery shut down. A lot of those bottles and cases are really sought after today.
4 generations of John Kurth, so couldn't think of any other names, right? Yeah. So anyway, but it doesn't stop here, because then we move on to the 6th generation. So.
Well, John Frederick, or Hans, our son, and he, of course, grew up in Columbus, went to Columbus High School, and then after graduation from high school, he decided to go into the military, and he got accepted at West Point, which is quite an accomplishment in itself. Anyway, he graduated from West Point with honors, and then served 13 years in the Army, attaining rank of captain. Unfortunately, he was killed by a roadside bomb in Tikrit, Iraq. And he had a son, John Alexander, and John Alexander graduated from the University of South Carolina, and he could have gotten into OCS and become an officer quite easily, but he decided to start right out with basic training. So he went to basic training and graduated from basic training, went to advanced infantry training. From there he went to Fort Bragg, now it's Fort Liberty, and became an airborne, got his jumping degree. Well, after that, he decided to go for his Army Ranger badge, which is difficult to do. It's quite a process just to get in to try for it. Well, anyway, we went down to his graduation at Fort Bragg, and at the ceremony, they mentioned that there were 276 that started out in this Ranger class, and only 100 made it, so it gives you an idea of just how tough it is.
Just want to throw that picture up there too. So the Ranger when he was a little boy. So now we'll move on to the Kurth homes. And this is on a postcard. And so we've got two Kurth properties there. The one in the far left, which is, we'll see another picture of shortly. And so I'm going to label that on the next slides, number 1, so we can just differentiate between the two. And then on the right-hand side, the foreground, that's still owned by John and Loretta, and they have a couple of renters in there at this time. In between then, right now, that's a picture of the Dave Hovey mansion. So anyway, I'll let you talk more on this, John.
Well, the Kurth mansion was built in 1897. It was built by John Henry Kurth. Now the Kurth family no longer owns that structure. However, I understand from Dave Hovey that it's now on the market, and some people have been looking at it. I think they're asking $600,000 for it, which is probably going to be tough to get. I know that the outside of it needs a lot of work, and I guess the inside does too. Yeah, when it was a motel, it catered mainly to people who were going to the diesel truck driving school. There may have been others that used it periodically, but there were folks from the truck driving school that stayed there on a regular basis. And then the house at 820 Park Avenue that I grew up in was built in 1898, and it was built by Christian Kurth, a brother to John Henry. And my grandfather eventually bought the house from Christian, and he went to Milwaukee and joined the Kurth Malting Company there. Christian is a grandfather to Bob Weezy, who's in the group here tonight. Now at 841 Park Avenue, right across from 820 is 841 Park Avenue, and it was a wedding gift from grandfather John Henry to Frances, who married Dwight Sherrill. I think I mentioned this before, but they paid heed to be fruitful and multiply. Oh, Lloyd was a pharmacist in town, as I think most of you know. And they had 4 children, if my memory serves me correctly. There was Lloyd, Phil and Bill, of course, and Bob. I think I got them all.
So then Ruth and Tom Hermanson lived there. So this is also right next door to Ace Hardware.
Now we're looking at 869 Park Avenue, which is a house that was built by my grandfather, great-grandfather, John Henry, as a wedding present for Aunt Dolly and Uncle Ralph's wedding. And they also had quite a family. If you know anybody in town whose name is Cheryl or Pratt, they're probably descendants from the Kurth family.
The Ellers family lived there for quite some time, right? The Ellers family, did they live there? Just like your grandpa reading the Bible, we'll start here in the beginning. We've got the original building that was put up. There's a scene, a lot of barrels sitting outside there. So at this point, I'm just going to read some information here off a sheet that there's too much on here to really put on slides, so I'll just read this to you quickly. In 1859, Henry John and Frederica Kurth came to Columbus with a brewer's boiler of 4 barrels capacity and immediately bought land on the south side of town. Columbus at that time was a promising prospect for a young brewer. Many German families lived in town and on surrounding farms, and the fertile rolling hills of Columbia County produced great quantities of barley and hops in the 1850s and 1860s. The Kurths built a little frame brewery, dug a well, and the brewery became known for its creamy, dreamy beer. In 1865, they spent $4,000 to erect a large brick brewery building just south of their original structure, and in 1866, they put in a large boiler. In 1870, Kurth was the largest of 3 breweries in Columbus. In that year, the Kurths produced 100 barrels, and by 1880, the production was up to 250 barrels. Also in 1880, Henry turned the operations over to his son, John Henry. Henry died in 1882, and another son, Christian, joined the firm in 1886, at which point the business became known as John H. Kurth and Company. The next 2 decades were years of great growth for the Kurth Brewery. By the year 1900, the brewery complex included a tall grain elevator, a 4-story malt house, the 3-story 1865 brewery, the old frame 1859 building, then used as an office and a beer cellar. Also on the site, there were 2 or more small dwellings, a chicken coop, a wagon shed, and an ice house. A bottling department established in 1895 sat across the street, as did the 2 magnificent Queen Anne houses of John and Dorothea and Christian and Amanda Kurth. In 1902 to 1903, the new Kurth office building was erected, which is the structure that stands today yet. Several other structures were added to the complex around that same time, including a new 5-story brewery, more beer cellars, major additions to the malt house, elevator and bottling plant, and a large new barn for draft horses and wagons. In 1904, the company was incorporated, and the Kurth Company, with a capital stock of $400,000. The heyday of the business was around the year 1914. In that year, the brewery was large enough to produce 100 barrels of beer a day, making it the largest brewery in the county. The company produced several brews: the light-colored Banner beer, the dark Luxembourg brand, the heavier Bock beer, and the special Christmas brew. A separate lager was produced for draft beer, and at least one other brand, Columbia, was produced for a short time. But perhaps even more significant was the Kurth Company's malting operations. The malt house at that time had a capacity of 800,000 bushels. In addition, a separate malt house in Milwaukee, established in 1911 and run by Christian Kurth, had a capacity of 2 million bushels. The combined malting capacity made the Kurth Company one of the largest of the kind in the entire company. The brewery was one of the largest purchasers of barley in Wisconsin, using an average of 1,500 bushels of barley a day. Farmers from Columbia, Dane, and Dodge counties supplied barley for the brewery, and car lots were brought in from Minnesota, Iowa, and the Dakotas. The company owned 2 ice houses to supply itself and also the needs of other local businesses. It had its own electric dynamo and its own cooperage. It owned a large elevator near the railroad depot downtown, and also owned beer distributor warehouses in Toma, Portage, and Luxembourg. The company grew hops on its own Columbia County farm. The firm also owned 3 saloons in Columbus and had at least 17 others in south central Wisconsin. Okay, so there's a picture of what is today Park Avenue. And where all the brush and trees are growing there, that would be where Apple Tree is now. So there's a picture, brewery in its full force, taken sometime between 1902 and 1916, because you can see at the far end to the left, the building that was built in '02 or '03 is standing there. And then Susan Stair painted that last scene, and it's on display at City Hall. So here's how I used to get beer orders, and here's one from 1899. I'll let John talk about this.
All the folks that purchased beer from the brewery had these postcards in hand, and when they were ready to place a new order, they just filled out the card, dropped it in the mail, and mailed it to the brewery, and then of course the brewery fulfilled their orders. This picture of the Columbus Brewers baseball team was mostly local talent. At the end of the second row, there's a gentleman who you can see was a Afro-American, and his name was Johnny Williams. And Johnny Williams' job was to sit in a house down by the railroad tracks, and when a train was coming, he got out with a sign and stopped the traffic on the highway to let the train go through. And I think he's on the bottom row, there's Ignacio.
On the right, bottom right.
Bottom right. Segan Lane went to the big leagues and pitched for, I believe, the White Sox.
So you were a farm club, more ways than one.
I guess so. Couple of reasons.
So here's a before and after, or then and now picture. So again, the existing building there, and which would be near the intersection of what would be Farnham Street and Park Avenue. And John, I'll let you talk about this as far as pulling up in front of the office there.
Well, there used to be a platform scale outside the office building, and the balance for the scale was inside, located inside, but farmers would bring in their barley and either drive their horse and wagon up on that scale and get it weighed, or later, of course, it was trucks. They'd get weighed up and then go in and collect for whatever they had brought to deliver. And usually go into the tavern, I think, to the bar room and have a few drinks. And of course, sometimes I think euchre games followed the drinking. Well, I guess you can see the blueprint on the screen there, and it's pretty much self-explanatory, I would say.
If you notice there too, it's mentioned, or it's noted that it's Ludington Street at that time and not Park Avenue, so I assume that it was changed at some point, obviously. And then John mentioned before about the bottling house being across the street, so that was one of them. There it is right there.
Randy, can I make a comment on that?
Yeah, go ahead, Pete.
Can you go back one? That picture you're looking at is what's called the Sanborn Fire Map. Sanborn was a company that was an insurance adjusters, and they figured out the amount of risk. Different colors there is that had to do with the risk. My guess is the one in pink probably had a furnace or a boiler or something in it which would make it riskier. And you have blue and yellow. The yellow probably were more barns than the others were. So each one was rated differently by the insurance company. And that's from a Sanborn Fire Map, of which there's probably about 4 or 5 of those at Columbus at different times.
Thank you, Pete. Yeah, and that's currently in the office at the existing brewery. And the bottle house.
Well, one thing that has been mentioned yet, I don't believe, is that there was a tunnel that led from the brewery over to the bottle house. It ran parallel with on the east side of the road, and then when it came to about where the Ace Hardware store is now, it went under the road and into the basement of the bottle house. But the tunnel had an air line, a water line, and a beer line running through it, and it was big enough so that a person could walk through it and maintain the lines. I remember, as I mentioned before, going into the bottle house and watching the beer line come in, and okay, directly behind the brewery tavern now is a building that it was insulated with about, I'd say, 8 to 10 inches of cork all the way around. That was where they kept ice. And then in the photo that you're looking at there's like a 2-story building. And the bottom part of that building was a garage. I can remember there was an old 2-wheel, like a 2.5-ton truck there, and a pickup truck. And the 2.5-ton truck had mechanical brakes. In other words, there were just rods that would run from the brake pedal to the wheels, to the brake shoes. And that truck went down to Pewaukee, to the Kurth Farms down there. I guess I think I rode in it, but I never drove it. But I imagine you'd have to have a pretty strong leg to make a sudden stop with no hydraulic assist. And then there was a Model B Ford pickup truck in there also that, I don't know, just used for general running around, I think. But my grandpa used to take me fishing in it. And one time we were on our way down to the river, and he had to make a sudden stop. No seat belts, of course. And I flew ahead, hit my teeth on the dash, knocked out both of my front teeth.
Okay, so the old picture is actually a postcard, and so I kind of tried to get a shot from the same general area. So the biggest building on the end of the old postcard would be where Ace Hardware is now. And then, so the existing building then, and which was built in 1902 or to 1903, somewhere in there. And now, might be hard for you to see, but at the top of the old picture, across the front of the building, it says John H. Kurth and Company. And if you look at the one today, all it says is Kurth, so I don't know what happened to John H. Company, unless you have an idea.
No, I don't have anything concrete.
Well, apparently there wasn't concrete either, that's why it fell off. Okay, so some ashtrays, if you can read it, it says Kurth Malting Company on there, so. And in addition to the ashtrays in the bar, back in the day it used to have spittoons in there, right?
Well, I can remember the spittoons being in there. They were brass, though, and not copper, as it's pictured here. But obviously one is an ashtray, and I don't know, you can't really see the top of that other one. I don't know if that is a spittoon or not. Huh?
It looks like the same one, just close up.
Yeah, I think you're right. I can't be absolutely certain of this, but I think that my great aunts may have helped out some with the bookkeeping. Quite certain that Aunt Annie did, and I don't know about Aunt Ruth.
So this is a close-up of the page on the right, and it lists all the Kurth properties. Now, earlier it was written in there are 3 properties, bars owned in Columbus. John recalls 4, but there were also 17 properties in outlying areas, and it's kind of small back here for us. So, but the 2 in the top were in town, and we'll have pictures of them: the City Saloon and the City Corner Saloon. Now, that wasn't necessarily the name of the bars, but just how they referred to it. And then they had bars in Watertown, Ryle, or 2 of them in Ryle, Fall River, Oconomowoc, Cambria, Kilbourne, which would be Wisconsin Dells, 3 in Sun Prairie, Reeseville, North Bristol, Boston, Pittsville, Partyville, Beaver Dam, and Waterloo. And so we've got some pictures of the some of those. Now, this is the first one that they refer to as the City Saloon. It's at 120 East James Street, and it is now a tattoo parlor, but for the longest time it was Vet's Bar. And John Beal is here, and his dad, Mike, ran Vet's Bar for a while, right?
Yes, we lived upstairs.
And then, so if you take a look at that building, if you can see below the arch, above that little shelf there, it has the year 1898, but it also has a K for Kurth. And then the corner saloon was what we knew quite well as the Fireman's Tavern, and now it's Tea Time Wine and Wine Bar and Bakery. And then, if you recall, there was one that was listed in Reeseville. So there it is being built in 1911. And I happened to go to Reeseville last week and took a picture of it today, so you can compare the two. For the longest time, it was a tumbleweed bar in Reeseville, if you ever got down there. And it's now a 4-unit apartment building. And the owner just happened to be there when I stopped by. So there's the front of that tavern. If you look at the sign on the right, it says Kurth Block. So I don't know if it was, they own the whole block or what it might be. So John, I'll let you take over from here and talk about the fire and the connection that your grandpa had to that.
Well, when the fire first got started, my grandfather and Lloyd Sherrill were in with fire extinguishers trying to put it out. When they could see that they weren't making any progress, they got out of the building. And just shortly after they got out, there was a huge explosion. Phil Sherrill was telling me about this some years ago before he passed. Otherwise, that was the only account I had of my grandfather and great uncle Lloyd attempting to put the fire out. But I think that the explosion was caused by dust. They had their own electrical system, and I think a spark probably ignited the dust, similar to the Cambria mishap in recent years.
At Didion.
Yeah, at Didion. You've probably all seen on television where the administration at Didion is in pretty hot water.
That's a clip, I believe that was out of a Milwaukee paper. So this clip, I believe I saw somewhere that it was out of a Milwaukee paper. Just a short mention of it here. But mentions that there was one person that was hurt. August Hayden was kicked by one of the frightened animals and severely injured. So, and William Miniman, a volunteer fireman and employed by the brewery, was overcome by smoke and badly burned. So, and we just got some more pictures of the ruins, basically. So that was the fire department's steamer engine. That was basically it for putting out fires. So on the left, that was taken after the fire. The one on the right was just a photo that we had at the fire department showing the same steamer. And that picture on the right was taken in 100 block of South Ludington Street. So above, if you look at the top, the building on the far right, so that would be where Sherrow's or Forward Pharmacy is now. Oh, and the Poster Clinic. Sam doesn't remember that, do you? All right, Prohibition. So, John, I'll let you take this one here.
obviously that was a big blow to the brewery, and they did, I don't think they ever actually brewed any non-alcoholic beer. There's a picture in the back room there of my grandfather with a class that went to learn how to brew non-alcoholic beer. But I guess that basically non-alcoholic beer is brewed the same as regular beer, and then the alcohol is removed. But I don't think that the Kurth company ever marketed any non-alcoholic beer. They, during Prohibition, they bottled soda pop in the bottle house there, and then they, to stay afloat during Prohibition, they also sold off some of their poorer farmland and some of the establishments that they had around the country that weren't doing so well. They unloaded those too. In addition, well, they had farmland out west, sold some off too, and then they had insurance money from the fire. But I was told that they invested that, and the investments didn't pan out very well, so that didn't help the situation much. But anyway, they managed to start up again in '33, but they brewed on a much smaller scale, but kept going until, I guess it was '49 we called it quits.
So here's some of the ones that I mentioned before, so some of them are here, the different types of Kurth brews. And so I would think most of you saw the movie A League of Their Own. It turns out, apparently there's a TV series on it now, on some network that I don't watch, but someone sent this picture to Retta, and they were watching A League of Their Own on TV, and look what advertisements on the wall, unbeknownst to anybody, right? Yeah. And so they snapped a picture of it, sent it to Retta. So John, I'll let you talk about sometime, after 1849, after the brewing was stopped.
Well, I think those buildings stood until, probably around 1960, possibly a little longer. I remember going over there and getting in a back window and going up into the brewery to shoot pigeons. And then later on, some of my buddies and I would go through the brewery and get up on the roof. And we'd actually shoot pigeons with shotguns. And that was welcome because pigeons were carriers of histoplasmosis. I think I've got the right terminology there for the disease. But anyway, every once in a while a pigeon would fall down right in the street in front of a passing car. Wondering what the heck was going on. Well, this is a picture showing the Columbus Transport Garage, which is, we of course don't have the buses anymore, but it's rented out to Resource Solutions, which is right next door to it, and they rent the whole building. When Brightway came in and bought the buses from us initially, and then they lost the contract. And I wondered what I was going to do with the garage. I really didn't want to sell it. And I thought, well, I'm going to end up renting out stalls. But I approached the owner of Resource Solutions, and he said, well, I'll take the whole thing. So that's the arrangement that I got. Oh, and then in '56, I guess, there was a fire in the old, that barn that actually stood where the bus garage is now, and totally burned down. It was a real hot fire. It broke the glass in the windows on the opposite side of the street. And the theory is that some kids were playing with matches in what would have been the hay mow in that old building, and started on fire. It was a real hot fire, I know that. There were some little ventilation holes in the building next to it. And the framework in there was charred from the heat of the fire.
So in that case, then, that fire engine in front there, that's the 1925 American France pumper that replaced the horse-drawn steamer. And so that's the, that was used until 1960, so it lasted from 25 to 60. So, and we're looking at someday getting that refurbished, or restored, I should say. John likes to talk about the smokestack.
Well, as you can see on the screen there, it was 146 feet high, which was quite high for a smokestack back in the day. But that smokestack was right on the side of a building where they had three or four large furnaces that burned big chunks of coal. And the purpose of that hot water, one purpose at least, was just across the alleyway from the building. There was a room that had a large steam engine in it. And so that made the hot water to make the steam engine function. I remember going over there as a youngster with my dad. There was a guy that tended the steam engine, and it was my grandmother's job to make lunch for him every day. And we'd go to a window just off the alleyway, and he'd come to the window, and there was a series of flat belts leading from the steam engine, and I imagine they went to the, now I'm not even 6 years old at this time, so it was a long time ago, but anyway, I assumed that they must have gone to the story above. I can't believe they would have gone any further than that. Okay, here we are at the interior of the hospitality room now. And one of the big events at the brewery over the years was they had two euchre teams, the 88s and the 98s. And the 88s and the 98s got the name from Ferrari Implement. Bernie Ferrari was a regular customer at the brewery, and so I guess that's how they got their name, but the teams each had vests. And then they had a traveling trophy, which was an Oldsmobile hubcap with a piece of ready rod and an Oldsmobile rocket screwed onto the top of it. But anyway, there was even press coverage on it. Bob Stanley from the Journal-Republican came down there almost every Wednesday night, and there'd be an article in the paper the following week telling what the scores were. And the low score was always responsible for lunch the following week. So I don't know, they had a big time, I know that. I was old enough when they were doing this that I sometimes went and helped out tending bar.
So these plaques are in the front of the building now, and so it mentions pretty much what we've already covered, but, and then, so we got some pictures of the interior. So is there anybody here that's never been in there? So we do have a few, okay, good. So anyway, we'll just show you some pictures of the interior quick, but just know that it looks better in person. Oh, so you notice in the picture in the right back in the corner, all the free popcorn you can eat.
Well, the ladies' bathroom used to be right above that area, and the only thing that heated it was a register. The hot air from down below went up through that register. Well, sometimes there'd be a card game going and there'd be some lady using the bathroom up there and she'd wad up paper and drop it down through the register and fall on the table and play it back. On numerous occasions.
Okay, on the picture on the left is actually taken in the office part, showing the hallway leading back to the bar. Okay, here we are in the office, or what was the office, and notice that there's a window there and then a counter, so I'll let John talk about this here.
Well, the primary purpose of that counter was just to do bookkeeping when a farmer came in and with barley or hops, whatever it might be, and they just calculated what his pay would be and paid him, and that was written down. I guess that's about all there is to it.
Here's another picture of the office. So if the first time you're in there and you want to use the bathroom, you have to go down the hall and turn right, and the first thing you see there is that watch cat, which probably scares people that don't know that it's there. And then on the right there was a sliding window there with John sticking his head through there. Behind there was the room with the vault. So I think it's just speculation as far as what they actually used that window for.
Well, that room could be closed off from the rest of the building, and I'm thinking it was for security reasons, but there was a window above that counter that was in the previous picture. Yeah, and I think that people had the option of coming inside to get paid, and that there was a door where that was, so that was locked off from the room that went into the vault. And then in the wall that was right by that desk where you saw the bobcat standing on top of it, there was a kind of like a little pocket door, and that could be slid up and down. So I think that it was for security in passing money back and forth. But that's purely speculation. I don't know why else it would be set up the way it was.
So there you got your 3 beer choices, including the Kurth label. So along with Miller Lite and Point Amber, and there's a Wine and Kugel seasonal on the right. But tell us about the Kurth label and what you get when you order a Kurth beer.
Well, the tap panel has got the Kurth beer on at this time. When a beer is drawn out of there, it's actually Liney's Original. It's a recipe that they've used since 1857, I think. And the brewery was established in 1859, the Kurth Brewery. Prior to putting our name on the Liney's Original, we had Point Special, and Point Special's recipe came from the 1850s also. And a lot of people really liked it, but our distributor no longer handles the Point Special, and so I did some checking around and found out that when they first used the recipe for Liney's Original, and we decided to get that in. And it seems like everybody likes it, so I guess everything is okay.
Okay, so that's the last of our presentation. I do have a few more slides here, though. So, thank you to John and Retta for all the information that they gave me for putting this together, and along with Sue and John Walcott, Jan Ulrich and the CHLPC, and my sister Bernice, who provided me some stuff years ago on the history of the brewery. Okay, we got just a couple more slides. We're gonna have Helen come up right now. So Helen Worka,
Yes.
from our society, wants to say a few things. And then I do have 2 more slides after this.
Thank you so much, Randy. Thank you so much, Mr. Kurth and Randy. That was one of the best presentations I've seen in years. You guys are just excellent together. So, thank you. So, not including you two, we still have over 100 people who came out tonight. We counted 4 times.
I don't know if everybody had a chance to sign in, but.
Yep, so, yes, so I have a few housekeeping items. Randy, would you hold up the ornaments for me? I've got some notes on my phone. Okay, so, a few things, because now that we have you all here, we want to let you know what our society is all about. Let me switch hands here, 1 second. I had to put 2 sets of glass on my phone because I always drop it, so. Sorry, thumbprint. Okay. All right. So, just to let, we also want to thank the Community Center for having us tonight. That was really amazing. We could not have fit in our previous venues at all, so thank you so much to the Community Center. This evening has actually been filmed, so if you want to go back and watch any of this and see some of the slides up close again, this has been filmed by our Columbus Area Historical Society president, David Bennett. He's recording it, and it'll be on our Facebook page for your viewing pleasure. Our next Tap Into History program will be here again. It'll be on Wednesday, November 15 at 6 p.m. And our presenter will be former Wisconsin State archaeologist Bob Birmingham. And our topic will be on local Native American history, local to our area and region. So please join us then. We also have ornaments for sale. So we have about 10 of the Kurth Brewing Company ornaments. Sorry, they're sturdy. They're made out of wood, so they're nice and sturdy, and they do have this amazing cedar smell to them. It smells really good. It'll be nice on your Christmas tree. And the information on the contact information for the society on the back is not accurate, but the historical information inside is accurate. We've had a few changes with our websites and things. And so the Kurth Brewery ornament is available for $10, and that one was from 2018. All of the ornaments from 2022 and backwards are $10. We're doing a pre-sale tonight for our, we chose to do the George A. Hazy popcorn wagon as our ornament. So it doesn't look like that, but they used the skyline. It's pretty amazing. You'll see up close, like they followed all of that imprint. It's pretty amazing laser work done on the wood as well. So we're doing that for pre-sale tonight. That is $15. So if you give us your name and tell us how many you want and your phone number or email, we can get in touch with you. Those ornaments will be for sale. They will be available. Later this month, we're doing a brat fry here at the Community Center. It's going to be on Saturday, October 28th, during the Community Center Goes to the Dogs Day. And so they're going to have amazing, I think a dog rescue is going to be here, and they're going to be selling ice cream. They're going to have reading to dogs, just dog themed. They're going to have a dog parade. Bring out your dog in costume. The parade will be on the Dickinson Boulevard. It's going to be great. So we'll have our ornaments in person on the 28th, and we will be joining the wine walk. The Oddfellows are lending us their space. We're still deciding what we're serving. It may just be a coffee and hot liquor stop. We don't have any bartenders on our Historical Society team, so so we need someone to serve wine. Make us popular, Mr. Kurth. And so you can come and buy ornaments in person. And we're going to have a $1 off coupon in the swag bag. So if you're signed up for the wine walk, you can save $1 on your ornament. The Brat Fry and event on the 28th of October is going to be 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. here. Okay, also we welcome new members all the time. We meet on the second Wednesday of the month at Circus, just across the street in the back room. You know they've got good popcorn also, and good pretzels, and we're good people, as you've seen tonight. So if you haven't already signed in on the sign-in sheet to get information, we'd appreciate you doing so back at the table. We do have a donation jar back there. These programs are free, but we're all volunteers, and we would love your support throughout all of this, especially because we are looking for a museum home. We had a wonderful location, many thanks to Mr. Fry, who passed away, But, so our museum collection is in storage, and we are looking for a new home for our museum. We plan to have a capital campaign in the future to help finance this, but we need a potential location first. We've had some ideas, but we could use the community's support, because you guys are here because you love history, right? You want to see our history, right? So we're doing these programs to keep bringing the history to you, even though we don't have a building with our exhibits and displays. So this is just an amazing turnout. We're all so thrilled. Thank you. Back to Randy.
Thank you, Helen. Just one more thing to add. So we're promoting the popcorn wagon as well. We've been in talks with the popcorn wagon people, and we have some people belonging to our group that are also part of the popcorn wagon group as well. And so as we look to find a new home for museum, one thing that we're looking for is a place that could also house the popcorn wagon, get that in there, because they're in favor of the popcorn wagon people. I don't know if I should say committee or whatever. They're in favor of having it joining with our effort to get a museum, and that would be able to house a popcorn wagon as well. I just have one more slide. So, consider this presentation as being educational, like going to school. All school classes go on field trips. It's Wednesday night, so guess where our field trip will be. So, hope to see everybody at the brewery after leaving here. So, thank you very much.